Shoplifting is now one of the most profitable businesses in New York.
Target announced that it will close 9 of its stores, including the one on 117th Street in Harlem. The stores will shutter for good on October 21st.
And as Fox 5's Arthur Chen reports, Target's blaming the closures on ongoing problems with theft and violence.
Welcome to my channel, Outspoken Samantha. If you are new here, welcome. Since you clicked on the video to watch it, I would love it if you would also click on that subscribe button and help me to grow this channel. And if you're returning, welcome back. I truly do appreciate your continued support of my channel and leaving comments below and having conversations about these issues. And I would love it if you would make sure that you are subscribed as well. So I don't think that those of us that don't live in California or New York realize how big of an impact retail theft is having on pretty much the entire country. And despite the fact that, a lot of us don't live in these areas, that there's actually a very real possibility that most of us are actually contributing to it. But let's back up just a few years. So I know that all of us remember in 2020, Democrats sold defunding the police to their low-informed yet highly activist supporters based on the insane idea that fewer officers would solve problems and benefit low-income communities. And the real answer is that we just really needed to increase the number of social workers we had because people who commit crimes really just need a hug. However, what those of us with common sense knew and didn't have to learn the hard way is that if you defund the police, it doesn't actually decrease the level of crime being committed, only the level of crime being reported. And doing so actually allows for more crime to happen because the kind of people who break the law now have absolutely no reason to not break the law. We also knew that the increase in criminal activity would have no impact on the top 1% of the country or the elites in office who, for some reason, seem to trust the motives of law enforcement when it comes to their safety, but want us to believe that officers are totally corrupt and racist when dealing with the other 99% of the population, namely us. We could tell that by turning this false narrative into public policy, it's everyday people who would suffer the most, including the very minority communities that these government officials insisted that they were fighting for. And of course, we also know that the goal of the people pushing this insane narrative and the subsequent soft on crime policies that have followed were never meant to actually help anyone, but to destroy the cities and communities of the bottom 99% and make our living situation so dire that we beg the government to take care of us and make us so desperate that we are willing to do whatever they ask of us just in order to survive. And while there are numerous examples of the various types of crime that have skyrocketed across the country that blatantly demonstrate that this was intentionally meant to deteriorate the quality of life for millions of people in the US, today we're going to focus on just one type of crime because it is having a far bigger impact on us than we realize. And again, there's a really good chance that most of us are actually contributing to it. And this is the issue of organized retail theft rings and the fact that there is an entire theft economy that is surviving and thriving, all while the rest of us struggle to make ends meet by doing things the right way. By now, we have all seen countless videos of people in these pro-crime states like New York and California just walking into stores, malls, shopping centers, gas stations, and corner markets, leaving with bags of stuff or grocery carts full of items. And while there have been a few good Samaritans who step in and try to stop these people, the vast majority of them are getting away with it. I don't know about you guys, but for the most part, I've pretty much had the mindset of, you guys voted for this, and I'm looking at you, Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, and Portland. And as much as it sucks, and we do feel for these people who are honest workers, who are just trying to get by day to day in these cities, but have to try and survive in a city where the policies work against them and their policymakers favor criminals. However, the reality is that the effects of what is happening are far-reaching, and everyone in the country, you, me, your grandma, your best friend, we could all be potentially fueling this activity from our own homes. So I came across this video by a content creator named Cash Jordan, and I will link it in the description box below. I highly recommend checking it out. He really dove into this issue. So, I mean, obviously I'm not going to play the whole video, but again, I'll leave it for you below so you can go check it out. But Jordan did this whole segment where he exposed just how big this entire thing has gotten. And we're not talking about the lie that Democrats like to push, that these are just individuals and families that are just so down on their luck that they're just trying to get the essentials for them and their family families to survive. And even if that were the case, it would be wrong because it's still stealing. But these people are not taking things like bread and diapers and eggs. In this article, it says a recent video on Twitter showed a supermarket employee tussling with a shoplifter who had filled her bag with items. As the employee pulled the bag from her hand, she cried, "I have to feed my family." That's a common refrain from shoplifters these days, echoed in media headlines proclaiming that these people have turned to stealing to put food on the table, despite a U.S. social safety net that includes $185 billion in spending on food stamps and other nutritional assistance programs. In truth, America's exploding shoplifting problem predates our current economic difficulties. Much of the stealing, store owners and security experts say, has less to do with putting food on the table than with a rise in organized theft, and it's having a particularly adverse effect in cities where criminal justice reforms have made it easy to get away with. Retail theft in America has grown to a $94 billion epidemic, according to the National Retail Federation, a staggering 90% increase since 2018. Retailers say that the problem gained momentum about a decade ago when states began decriminalizing low-level shoplifting, raising the value of goods that a person must steal to enable prosecutors to bring felony charges. More than 2/3 of states now treat shoplifting as a misdemeanor if someone boosts less than $1,000 in goods, and 15 states have raised their limit to $1,500 or more. More than 70% of surveyed retailers report that shoplifting spiked in their stores after these changes. Bail reforms that free without bond those arrested for shoplifting have also contributed to the problem. An official of the Association of Certified Anti-Money Laundering Specialists says that retail theft is now a low-risk and high-reward line of business. And a booming business it is, which is where we get to these organized retail theft rings. So the people who used to be stopped by police and have to actually try to work around them are now conducting their operations without resistance. They're creating shopping lists of high-demand items, storing them, and then selling these items themselves for a profit. And Democrat policies have tied the hands of law enforcement to stop this, penalized shop owners to retaliate, and made most of this activity not even worth it to most people to risk their own safety to do anything about. So let me play a little bit of what Cash Jordan covered on his visit to New York, though this is a rampant issue in all of the major cities that I have already mentioned.
Here we are inside Ulta Beauty, and stores like this are a massive target for shoplifters, not just here in New York, but all across the country.
A National Retail Federation survey of companies identified Los Angeles, San Francisco, Oakland, New York, and Seattle as the top major cities hit by retail crime. Organized rings, as opposed to lightning flash smash and grabs, use what are called boosters to steal items that then go to fencers who resell them for cash.
So we know that New York has a $4.4 billion shoplifting economy, and in every economy you've got different people doing different things to allow it to get that big.
High demand products are just the first part of the equation, but he does go on to explain just how deep these operations go.
Pyramid, you've got the thugs on the street that are stealing, and at the top you've got the millionaires who are making bank. For example, that overpriced product you found online, extra cheap, yeah, that was probably stolen from here. And in a city like New York, where stealing under $1,000 worth of stuff is just a misdemeanor, this is a recipe for disaster. Not just here in New York, but in every city with lax laws that don't punish criminals.
Prosecutors say the alleged ringleader, Ronnie Rubinoff, directed teams to go after specific items to steal. And alleged Rubinoff even signed a lease on a warehouse in New York with plans to open a department store-like facility stocked with stolen goods.
A year ago, $3.8 million worth of stolen stuff right here in New York. And since then, mega theft operations have been popping up all over the country. And we're not talking about Aladdin stealing bread to survive. We're talking about full-blown businesses with inventory lists, warehouse distribution, and packing facilities, all made possible by soft-on-crime policies that don't punish anyone for doing anything wrong. And think about it, if you can steal whatever you want in New York under $1,000, that's like having a get-out-of-jail-free card, and criminals know it. And because of inflation and the internet, you've got hard-hit consumers just out there looking for a good deal. These are well-meaning people buying this stuff. And half of America probably has no idea that when they make an online purchase, they're supporting organized crime.
As you can hear, he touched on the point that I was trying to make in the beginning, that as much as we see all of this happening in areas that we may or may not live in, there is a really good chance that all of us are contributing to it. And how that is happening is that with these organized theft rings, everybody within the organization has a different role, whether it be to go in and get the items. We have people that are storing it, and we have people that are selling it. And the areas that they are selling it on are typically either online marketplaces on Amazon or places like Facebook Marketplace or eBay, and all of these areas that we typically shop on to find a discount. And of course, with the economy the way that it is, we are looking for the best deals on things because everything is so expensive. This is the story of one of those rings that was busted. It says a man has been busted with at least $5 million worth of stolen shoes and apparel, including thousands of pairs of Nikes, after a raid on a warehouse in California. Roy Lee Harvey Jr., 37, was arrested by the Los Angeles Police Department's Commercial Crimes Division Cargo Theft Unit after detectives executed 2 separate search warrants in Hollywood and the city of Hawthorne on Saturday. It is believed Harvey Jr. is responsible for receiving, redistributing, and reselling a high-dollar amount of stolen property, an LAPD statement said. Photos show hundreds of boxes neatly stacked on top of each other, some bearing the Nike logo. Other shoes sit in a display case inside the warehouse. In November, a swarm of teenagers swiped $12,000 worth of goods from a Los Angeles Nike store in a flash rob mob that was caught on video. More than a dozen suspects flooded the South Alameda Street Nike community store on November 19th and were seen filling trash bags with merchandise as shoppers looked on in horror. So they steal thousands of dollars worth of shoes, they store them in this warehouse, and they are again creating enough of a revenue to be able to rent a warehouse, to pay the salaries of these people, and to acquire an enormous amount of wealth for the person in charge. And then they go and they sell these things on these websites that we all use, and by purchasing them, we're not even aware that we are contributing to this activity. Is it just me, or does this not look like people trying to steal things because their family is starving? And this is another one where cosmetics was the focus. In a Tony suburban enclave in the San Diego foothills, police say an organized retail crime Queenpin had built an empire. Tucked behind the stone walls of her 4,500 square foot Spanish-style mansion, Michelle Mack had stockpiled a small fortune in cosmetics that had been stolen from Ulta and Sephora stores across the country, authorities say. Police don't suspect that Mack, 53, took the items herself. Instead, they say she pulled the strings from the shadows, employing a network of around a dozen women who stole the items for her so she could resell them on Amazon. With their airfare, car rentals, and other travel expenses paid by Mack, the suspects committed hundreds of thefts up and down the California coast and into Washington, Utah, Oregon, Colorado, Arizona, Illinois, Texas, Florida, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, and Ohio, investigators said. Mack selected which stores to target and what merchandise to take, and the women were sent to clear out entire shelves of merchandise before making off with stolen goods stuffed into Louis Vuitton bags, investigators said. Investigators began referring to the theft group as the California Girls and considered Mack the crew's ringleader. She made millions reselling the stolen items on Amazon to unwitting customers at a fraction of their typical retail price, investigators said, before she was arrested in early December. What I find fascinating is that this retail theft, these crime rings, are not limited to a certain demographic of people. We see all these teen punk kids breaking into stores, stealing everything from a gas station and leaving the entire place in ruins. And then we see people like Michelle Mack, who is employing women across the country of all demographics, whoever is willing to work for her. And while a lot of these people are obviously selling things for a profit, a lot of them are doing it just because they can get away with it. This is an opportunity for anybody that has no morals and no soul, and these kind of people come in all shapes and sizes. Lastly, I did want to touch on an item that had me particularly puzzled, but this is a very popular item, and that is this massive surge in the theft of laundry detergent, because I've seen so many videos of this happening and I could not figure out why this was such a popular item to take. But our friend Cash Jordan here explains why people are doing this and solves that mystery.
So I never knew why detergent was such a popular item to steal, but now it makes a lot of sense. Even the most unsophisticated of criminals can take something from a store like this and then turn it around into instant money at the nearest laundromat. Because in New York, most apartments don't have laundry in them. People are all using laundromats. Even we use one sometimes when our tiny little machine gets overloaded after a trip.
There you have it. It's not because these criminals want to smell like lilacs and lemons. means is that this is something that is very easy to take and make quick money off of. And if someone tries to stop you, they'll get penalized and fired, just like this guy did.
It's video showing 3 alleged shoplifters stealing $500 worth of laundry detergent from a supermarket. And a store clerk is taping everything, even as the suspects quickly load up the getaway car.
Really, bro? You gotta resort to this? Economy's not that bad.
Seems pretty smart, right? The store employee isn't trying to physically stop the suspects. That's frowned upon by police and by big retailers. All he's doing is collecting the evidence on tape. You think he'd be praised for a job well done. Well, no. In fact, he was fired. Santino Barola says he was stunned when he was told he was getting the axe from the King Superstore in Centennial, Colorado.
The policy says no chasing, no physical deterrent, whatsoever. And I did neither of those things.
So obviously there are countless consequences as this type of thing is able to thrive. And it's those of us that, again, are trying to abide by the law that have to deal with those consequences. So first, many stores, of course, are trying to combat this theft by putting their items behind glass and under lock and key. They're also limiting the number of items you can bring through a self-checkout so that you actually have to interact with a human being in order to get out of the store. But the bottom line is, all of these measures cost the stores extra money and having to cover the cost of additional security, not to mention the increased cost of being able to stock their shelves because everything is more expensive anyway, means that those costs are being passed on to the consumer, or at least those of us that are actually paying for our items. And then, of course, there's the aspect of, they can do all that, but that's even if they're actually able to keep their store open at all. Because unfortunately, countless stores are closing, which means, again, innocent people can't get the things that they need, and there are fewer jobs for them to be able to earn the money to buy the things that they need. But make no mistake, guys, this is intentional, because every time that these politicians in charge of these cities have had the opportunity to stop this, they don't. And in fact, they lower the consequences for carrying out this type of activity. And you know how we know that they are capable of stopping this? Because other states are stopping this and not allowing it to happen. And it always cracks me up especially when you see clips on CNN where people seem to have these light bulb moments live.
This particular crew operated on mopeds and scooters. They were doing organized retail theft. They were doing snatches on the street, iPhones, iPads, clothing, so on and so forth. One of them that they are still seeking has 10 charges on one day because he's part of a pattern that's been going on. And I'm looking at the dates that their arrest started, which is probably close to when they got here. They've only been here a couple of months. So what the detectives are telling me is they have crews here that operate in New York, do all their stealing, then go to Florida to spend the money and then come back. And I'm like, well, why don't they just stay and steal in Florida? And they said, because there you go to jail.
And you know that they're hoping that their viewers do not catch on to the fact that they just admitted that the legislators in New York and California have just as much power to stop these things as the ones in Florida do. But in New York and California, they don't. And you can see the differences in the outcomes in these states, and that your representatives can either create good outcomes for people or terrible outcomes for people. And if it's terrible, it's intentional, because it does not have to be that way. So this is just empowering the worst of humanity, the people who have no morals, the people who have no values, who have no God, and who have absolutely no problem destroying innocent people's lives, livelihoods, jobs, communities, and everything else if it means money for them. These are the kind of people who have no problem seeing single mothers who go to the store to get formula and can't find it for their babies, or who go to the store to get the basic essentials for their families and the shelves are completely cleaned out. I don't care if a family-run business that puts in honest work to provide goods to the community while earning a living for themselves has to shut their doors and end up in poverty, as long as they can steal more than the next guy and are able to enrich themselves. And it doesn't matter to the people that allow it to happen through their policies and their laws. Again, this is something that I just really wanted to make people aware of, because I had never even considered that discounted item that I am buying on Amazon or Facebook Marketplace might actually be something that was stolen and is actually taking away from someone who is trying to make an honest living. And I don't honestly know how to tell, but I think that places like Amazon and Facebook Marketplace should obviously have a greater verification process to make sure that we are not emboldening this type of activity. I would love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments below. Please like this video. It really does help me out. I would love it if you would subscribe. Also, if there's anything that you ever want me to talk about, feel free to email me. That email is in the description box as well. I appreciate you guys. Keep it real, and I will see you in the next one.